Imagine turning down a $280,000 salary just simply because you thought you needed a traditional 4-year college degree to earn it.
Right, which is just wild to think about.
It really is. And then, finding out the person who actually got that job, they learned how to do it in their living room wearing a headset.
Exactly, just sitting on their couch.
That is the reality we are diving into today.
Yeah.
So, whether you are prepping for a strategy meeting or maybe secretly rethinking your own career trajectory or, you're just insanely curious about where the future of work is actually heading, this deep dive is going to be a massive aha moment for you.
We really are looking at a fundamental rewiring of the global economy here. I mean, the rules of human capital have just changed entirely.
And we actually have the documentation to prove it. Today, which is April 21st, 2026, a brand new white paper and an official press release just dropped.
Literally today.
Yes, fresh off the presses from EON AI Ventures and EON Reality, and they are unveiling this radical new model that they're calling the 1% solution.
Which is a very bold name.
Super bold. So our mission for this deep dive is to really tear into these sources, look at this model, and answer a question that is honestly terrifying a lot of people right now. Is the traditional 4-year college degree becoming completely obsolete in the age of artificial intelligence?
That is the million-dollar question.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because before we can even evaluate EON's specific solution, we need to understand the absolute reality of the current employment landscape. I mean, how broken is the traditional golden standard right now?
What's fascinating here is the sheer velocity of the fracture. The data in these sources paints a really stark picture of a system that is essentially failing its core promise.
Yeah, the numbers are pretty grim.
They are.
Yeah.
Let's look at the financial anchor first. Right now, the average cost of a traditional 4-year degree is sitting at $160,000.
Ouch.
Right. That is an enormous amount of capital to deploy up front. But the truly alarming metric isn't even the cost. It's the sudden, really steep drop in the return on that investment.
Meaning, like, what are you actually getting for handing over that 160 grand?
Exactly. The white paper highlights a 16% drop in employment for graduates aged 22 to 25, specifically those who possess what they call AI-exposed skills.
Wait, 16%? That's a huge chunk of recent grads.
It is massive. And think about what that actually looks like on the ground.
Yeah.
You spend 4 years mastering a discipline, say, junior-level data analysis or copywriting or, mid-level administrative framework.
Like safe jobs.
Right. You graduate, you enter the job market, and you find that generative AI models have entirely commoditized that specific skill set.
Man, it sounds like taking out a massive loan to buy a factory that produces a product no one buys anymore.
That is
The machinery works perfectly, but the market has just simply moved on.
that is a highly accurate way to frame it, actually. You're holding an expensive asset with depreciating utility.
Yeah.
And the psychological toll of this realization is profound.
I can only imagine the panic.
Oh, the sources point out that 59% of young workers actively fear AI displacement. It has moved from a fringe anxiety to essentially a majority consensus.
59%, over half.
Yep. And as a direct result, 44% of workers aged 16 to 34 are actively considering career changes. You have almost half of the emerging workforce looking at their desk job and realizing they need an immediate exit strategy.
Which completely flips the script on the narrative we all grew up with, right? I mean, we were told white-collar desk jobs were the safe harbor, and that physical labor was at risk of automation.
But it's exactly the opposite now.
Yeah. If you are staring at a screen all day, you are directly in the crosshairs of an algorithm. So if the white-collar path is crumbling, where is this mass exodus actually heading?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, we see a massive, almost counterintuitive migration. The safe harbor isn't a different desk job. It is the physical world.
Ah, so people are going back to working with their hands.
Exactly. Vocational education enrollment has surged by 20% just since 2020.
A 20% swing in educational demographics is a tectonic shift. That is huge.
And if you drill down into the skilled trades specifically, demand has spiked by 107%.
Hold on, I want to make sure I'm really grasping the mechanics of this shift, because the white paper frequently uses the term AI-resistant careers. Are we saying the definitive jobs of the future, like the ones actually safe from the algorithms, require tool belts instead of keyboards?
When you examine the actual capabilities of artificial intelligence, it makes perfect logical sense. There's this concept in computer science known as Moravec's paradox.
Moravec's paradox,
Okay,
guys.
it states that high-level reasoning requires very little computation, but low-level sensoromotor skills require enormous computational resources.
So math is easy, but walking is hard.
Precisely. AI is phenomenal at processing billions of data points or generating legal briefs or, optimizing supply chain logistics. But what it cannot do, at least not cheaply or efficiently, is crawl into an unlit, non-standardized air conditioning duct to diagnose a mechanical failure.
Right. Or physically wire a high-voltage smart grid.
Exactly.
Because the physical world is messy. It doesn't conform to a neat data set.
Precisely. The specific fields highlighted in the source are robotics maintenance, advanced HVAC, and electrical. Those are the actual bottlenecks of the modern world.
It's the physical infrastructure that keeps the digital world running. Like, we literally need humans to plug in the servers that run the AI.
And the demand is staggering. The white paper notes there is a 500,000 electrician gap in the United States alone.
500,000 jobs.
500,000 jobs just waiting to be filled. And because these roles are so critical, especially those tied to building and maintaining AI-enhanced facilities and data centers, they are commanding massive premiums.
This is where that huge salary comes in.
Yes. We are talking about salaries as high as $280,000 annually for specialized skilled trades.
$280,000 without a 4-year degree. That just completely shatters the conventional wisdom.
It does.
But, here is the friction point that I think any listener would spot immediately. Knowing where the high-paying AI-proof jobs are is one thing. But how do you realistically get there?
That's the catch, historically.
Right. If I am a displaced 28-year-old data analyst, and I decide I want to pivot into robotics or advanced HVAC, the traditional system tells me I have to quit my job, take on another massive loan, and spend 2 to 4 years in an apprenticeship or a technical college. The friction of that pivot is just way too high for most people.
That is the exact bottleneck the legacy education system creates. It forces a worker to choose between staying in a vulnerable job or taking on crippling unsecured debt to pivot. And that is the specific vulnerability EON AI Ventures is targeting here.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting, because EON is stepping in with a claim that sounds almost like science fiction. They just unveiled this 1% solution, and their core proposition is transforming multi-year education pathways into 90-day job-ready certifications.
90 days.
90 days. You go from a displaced desk worker to a certified robotics technician in a single fiscal quarter. I mean, mechanically, how on earth is that possible? You cannot teach someone the complexities of an electrical grid in 3 months of just reading textbooks.
Well, you certainly cannot achieve a 90-day turnaround using passive, lecture-heavy classrooms. That just doesn't work.
Right.
Because traditional learning requires a massive cognitive translation process. You read text on a page, your brain imagines the physical act, and then eventually you try to replicate it in the real world.
Yeah.
The how behind EON's speed is their global virtual campus.
Yeah.
It removes that translation layer entirely.
Interesting. So how does it do that?
It relies on AI paired with XR extended reality.
So we are talking about highly immersive spatial computing environments. Instead of reading about electrical currents, you are putting on a headset and virtually wiring the building yourself.
Exactly. You are placed in a fully interactive simulated environment. The platform offers access to 9,000 interactive courses that provide hands-on training.
9,000? That's a huge catalog.
It is. And it leverages how the human brain actually encodes memory. By physically performing the task in a high-fidelity virtual space, you are building actual muscle memory and procedural understanding.
Without the real-world risks.
Yes. Without the physical constraints, the material costs, or the safety risks of a real-world training lab, you can run through a complex diagnostic procedure 50 times in a single afternoon.
Okay, I have to stop you there and play devil's advocate for a second because my alarm bells are ringing.
Fair enough.
A track record in software and simulations is great, but we are talking about a 500,000-volt electrical grid here. Doesn't the complete lack of physical danger in a virtual reality headset create a massive, potentially fatal, false sense of security? I mean, if I mess up in a headset, I get a red screen and I hit restart. If I mess up on a live wire on a job site, I'm dead.
Right.
Can a simulation genuinely prepare a human being for the high-stakes tactile reality of these jobs?
That is the critical hurdle, and this raises an important question about the maturity of spatial computing. The sources address this by validating the technology through EON Reality's 25-year history and immersive knowledge transfer.
So they've been doing this for a while.
Decades. These simulations are not operating like a consumer video game. They are engineered to trigger the brain's motor cortex in ways that mirror real-world stress and procedural consequence. But you are touching on a vital point here. XR is a bridge, not the final destination.
Abridged to the physical site.
Yes. What the 90-day sprint achieves is a total mastery of the procedural knowledge. The cognitive load of what to do in what order and why is completely solved before the worker ever steps onto a physical site.
Ah, okay.
So when they do transition to the real-world equipment, they aren't learning the concepts. They're simply adjusting their pre-existing muscle memory to the actual physical weight of the tools. That is how you compress years of theoretical learning into just 90 days.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. You eliminate the classroom entirely and accelerate the procedural mastery. But let's look at the economics. Because a 90-day solution doesn't really matter if the barrier to entry is still $50,000.
Exactly.
In the traditional university model, you pay heavily upfront for the mere promise of a job. If you graduate and no one hires you, well, the university still keeps your money and you are left holding the bag. How does EON's 1% solution actually disrupt that financial trap?
They completely invert the risk model. They do this with a performance-based financing structure they call impact share.
Impact share. Okay, let's dig into the mechanics of that.
In the impact share model, learners pay only 1% of the total cost upfront.
Just 1%.
Just 1%. That covers the immediate administrative baseline. The remaining cost of the education is not structured as a traditional accumulating student loan. Instead, it is tied directly to the learner's actual future earning potential and their verified employment outcomes.
So wait, I want to make sure I'm hearing this correctly. This sounds like they are treating the learner the way a venture capitalist treats a startup.
That's a great way to put it.
The education provider acts as the investor. They front the capital and the training, but they only get a return on their investment if the startup, like the student, actually succeeds and lands the high-paying job.
That is an excellent analogy. The financial risk is shifted completely away from the individual and plays squarely onto the efficacy of the training program itself.
Wow.
If the program fails to place the student in a relevant, high-paying job, the student is not left drowning in debt. The provider absorbs that failure. This fundamentally changes the incentive structure of higher education. Institutions are no longer incentivized by enrollment numbers. They are exclusively incentivized by successful employment placement.
That is a profound shift, because it forces the educator to actually care about the macroeconomic conditions of the student's city. Which brings me to a major friction point. What if a student spends 90 days becoming a master robotics tech, but they live in a town where the only industry is agriculture?
Well, that is where the ecosystem incorporates a feature mentioned in the press release. It's called Career Compass.
Career Compass?
Yeah, and it is designed specifically to prevent the trained-for-nowhere scenario.
How does it do that mechanically?
It maps the specific micro-credentials a learner is acquiring in the XR simulations directly to localized regional job market demands and live salary data.
Oh, that's smart.
It acts as an active, data-driven GPS for the career pivot. It ensures that before a learner even begins a module, the endpoint, an actual open requisition in their geographic area, is already validated.
So you aren't guessing. You aren't just hoping the market wants you. You are fulfilling an active purchase order for human capital. There is a quote from the white paper that really anchors this whole philosophy. Dan Lajerskar, the chairman of EON AI Ventures, stated, and I quote, "Education shouldn't be a debt trap. It should be a renewable resource."
That phrasing is highly intentional.
It implies that education is not something you just mine once in your early 20s and hope the reserves last until you retire. It should be something you can tap into repeatedly, cleanly, and without ruining your personal financial ecosystem every single time the market shifts.
The current paradigm leaves young workers making desperate career pivots in total isolation, absorbing all the financial risk themselves. The 1% solution provides the structural scaffolding to make that pivot successfully. In 90 days at a fraction of the cost, with the risk assumed by the platform.
So what does this all mean for a massive enterprise or even a whole country? Because solving the friction of a career pivot for one 28-year-old is a massive win. But earlier we talked about a 500,000 electrician gap. We are talking about entire nations having to fundamentally retool their workforce for an AI-driven industrial age. How does a 90-day XR bootcamp scale up to handle the demands of a global enterprise or a sovereign government?
Well, this is where the white paper moves from a compelling micro solution to a truly massive macro strategy. The architecture of the global virtual campus is built for rapid deployment. According to the sources, institutions, governments, or large enterprises can roll out a fully operational, sovereign, AI-ready virtual campus in just 30 days.
30 days to essentially build a digital university infrastructure.
Exactly.
Think about the friction of building a physical community college or a corporate training center.
Yeah.
The zoning, the construction, the curriculum approval, I mean, it takes years and hundreds of millions of dollars. Here, a government facing a sudden industrial shift, say, a new semiconductor plant opening in their region, can deploy a targeted retraining infrastructure in a month.
And the platform is designed to be globally scalable. It's built with the infrastructure to support up to 1 billion learners simultaneously.
1 billion learners. That scale is almost impossible to conceptualize. But it immediately introduces a massive vulnerability. When you are training a billion people, especially for physical, high-stakes trades using artificial intelligence, the question of quality control is paramount.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, if an AI hallucinates while I'm asking it for a dinner recipe, I get a weird-tasting soup. If an AI hallucinates while training a technician on how to maintain the cooling system of a massive data center, the facility catches fire. How does EON address the inherent unreliability of generative AI at that scale?
That is the exact precision argument the white paper tackles head-on. They draw a very clear, hard line in the sand regarding the types of AI being deployed. Generic AI, like the large language models most consumers use daily, operates probabilistically. It might deliver 80 to 90% accuracy.
Right, which is fine for writing an email.
Exactly. For generating an email, 80% is fine. But EON points out that high-stakes industrial operations require 100% deterministic precision. You cannot have an 80% correct understanding of a high-voltage electrical panel. Close enough is a failure state.
So how do they guarantee that 100% precision?
To ensure the quality control, EON AI Ventures does not rely on a single generic consumer tool. They operate 3 distinct specialized platforms to silo and manage precision across different layers of society.
Okay, what are the 3 platforms?
First, there's the Enterprise AI platform. This is built for operational intelligence, providing flawless procedural guidance and tracking workforce performance at the highest corporate industrial levels.
So that's the zero hallucination zone.
Correct. Second, you have the Virtual Campus and Virtual Compass, which we just explored. That handles the scalable training, certification, and localized job mapping for academic institutions and governments.
Got it. And the third?
Finally, they deploy OHWOW, which is their consumer-facing platform built specifically to engage the individual learner.
So they're effectively building the entire digital infrastructure layer for the global workforce transition. From the single individual in their living room trying to pivot up through municipal governments all the way to multinational corporations. They are ensuring the training isn't just fast, but procedurally flawless.
That is the ambition laid out in the documentation. They are attempting to construct a robust bridge between the global disruption caused by AI and the necessary resilience of the global workforce.
Let's bring all of this directly back to you listening right now. What we've uncovered in these sources today is nothing short of a blueprint for surviving and really thriving in a radically altered economy. We started by looking at a legacy system that is currently fracturing. Spending 4 years and $160,000 for a degree that might leave you totally displaced by an algorithm before you even hit your 30s.
It's a terrifying prospect.
It is. But this white paper outlines an entirely new mechanism for human capital, the ability to pivot into highly paid, AI-resistant careers like advanced robotics or electrical infrastructure in just 90 days. You bypass the massive debt trap by paying just 1% upfront, effectively turning the education provider into an investor in your success.
Right.
You train safely and rapidly via immersive XR simulations that build real muscle memory, and you secure a role that artificial intelligence simply lacks the physical capability to replicate, all achieved within a single fiscal quarter.
From an economic standpoint, it is a phenomenal practical solution. But this raises an important question, one that extends far beyond just workforce logistics and salaries.
Oh.
If we can now essentially download high-level practical skills into our brains via 90 days of immersive XR simulation, how does that alter fundamental human identity?
Oh, wow. I see where you're going with this. The psychological impact of frictionless change.
Think about it historically. For generations, humans have defined themselves by their lifelong careers. I am an accountant. I am an electrical engineer. It became the core of our identity because it required so much time, money, and friction to become those things.
Right. You couldn't easily turn back.
Exactly. But if switching from a displaced desk worker to a master robotics technician becomes virtually frictionless, taking only 90 days and 1% of the cost up front, does the entire concept of a lifelong career vanish?
Because the sunk cost fallacy is gone, you are no longer trapped by your past educational investments.
Precisely. If you possess the structural ability to completely reinvent yourself 4 times in a single decade without facing financial ruin, who are you really? Your identity is no longer tied to a singular profession, but to your capacity for rapid adaptation.
That is wild to think about. It completely rewrites the rules of engagement with our own lives. We aren't just talking about upgrading our jobs, we're talking about upgrading our ability to evolve. It makes you wonder, if the friction was removed tomorrow, if the barrier to entry was truly only 90 days and 1%, what would you choose to become?